Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Double Waved Yellows podcast, the 2021 Portuguese Grand Prix review. And joining me in the commentary box is Hodders and Tyson. A very warm welcome to you both.
Hey up.
Hello.
So we didn't have a race that was as eventful as the previous races, but we've still got a few things to talk about this weekend, so let's crack on. So coming up today, we have got the race review. We're going to look at each of the drivers' stories. We'll go make a quick visit to the steward's office, see what happened in there, our winners and spinners, and finally the talking points. So, the headlines from the Portuguese Grand Prix. Hamilton takes his 97th win after passing Bottas and Verstappen. Max loses his fastest lap point for a track limit violation, his second of the weekend. Perez finishes fourth after a 50-lap stint on the medium tyres, an incredible display. Double points finish for Alpine, Alpine's first double score this season, and Ricciardo climbing from the back to finish ninth. Right, so let's start off with the man who won the race, Lewis Hamilton. Let's have a look at his notes. So, yeah, missed out on his 100th pole position, starting from second, took the lead on lap 20. Otters, he had a normal race as far as Lewis Hamilton goes.
Yeah, it was definitely a normal race by Hamiltonian standards. It is also noting, you said he missed on his 100th pole. One interesting little stat that was mentioned is that of the 159 races that he's taken part in for Mercedes, that was his 150th scoring race. You can't go wrong if you score in 94% of the races you've been in.
Yeah, incredible to think he's failed to score in just 9 of those. And I think each of those 9 will probably be DNFs. I can't remember if he's actually finished outside the points there. Yeah, Tyson, just a standard race for Lewis.
Yeah, very much Lewis Hamilton controlling the race as he always does.
Good, solid race for him. P2, Max Verstappen. He had a rather eventful weekend, and unfortunately, we are talking about track limits again. He was stripped of pole position for exceeding the track limits. He passed Hamilton just after the safety car restart. Unfortunately, Hamilton got him back on lap 11. Pitted late on for a set of softs. Thought he set the fastest lap on the final lap, but unfortunately ran wide and had the time deleted for exceeding track limits. Tyson will obviously cover it in a bit more detail, but Max exceeding track limits again.
Yeah, it was just really unfortunate, but that's kind of what we have been talking about the last few weeks. They've got to keep it between the lines, and it's good that the FIA is starting to police it now.
Absolutely. Okay, so Hodders will come to you for our next one. P3, Valtteri Bottas set pole by the slimmest of margins. He led away safely until lap 20. Pitted on lap 36, and unfortunately, Verstappen took him as he lost a bit of control of the car. And he's also had sensor problems on his car throughout the whole race weekend. So a bit of a Bottas weekend, is that fair to say?
I think a Bottas weekend, as normality goes, is about true. I mean, those sensors really were causing problems. He did mention he was having power problems, and that really did blight him. And again, just a standard weekend for him, but a podium position nevertheless.
I think I also saw somewhere that the podium combination of Hamilton, Verstappen, and Bottas, that is I think it's the most common podium combination that we've had across Formula One. It was previously Hamilton, Bottas, and Vettel, but obviously Verstappen has now sought to exceed that. Position 4, Sergio Perez started fourth, finished fourth. As we mentioned, managed to go 51 laps on the mediums before then switching to the soft tyres. He was basically gambling on a safety car late on. Voted the driver of the day by Formula One fans. Tyson, was it the right strategy?
It was certainly a valid strategy at the time. You never know when a safety car can come out, but maybe they just left him out there a little too long.
It looks like if he'd pitted around lap 40-45, it may have paid off. It means he
Maybe they
may
could
have been
get
able to
something.
get at Bottas late on. Okay, so P5, Lando Norris. He had a really good weekend, did Orlando, passing both Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz just after the safety car restart, and held fifth pretty much all of the race. Hodders, great result.
Another great result for Lando, and he's really getting that consistency that we were hoping he would get this season. He's been in the top 5 in all the races, and he's just been generally solid, and that's what we like to see.
Absolutely. Right, moving on to P6, Charles Leclerc. Tyson, a good, solid result for Leclerc. Started 8th, finishing 6th, collecting 8 more points for the Scuderia.
Yeah, it was a good weekend for Leclerc. Fairly quiet, but sometimes you just need a weekend like that.
Absolutely. Moving on to one of our top drivers this weekend, Esteban Ocon, finishing P7. He qualified a superb 6th, finishing 7th, getting passed by Norris and Leclerc throughout the race. Ocon had a good, strong weekend across the board.
He did. He had a solid. He got to Q3, had a solid top 10 finish, and he just generally drove well. And it's again just one of the not always his normal weekend, but hopefully we can see more of the same in the future.
And we were certainly seeing quite a lot of overtakes from both Esteban and following nicely onto his teammate P8 Fernando Alonso. A good stint on the soft set. Tyson, a good weekend for the French team all round.
Yeah, really good weekend for Alpine. Ocon was just very consistent all weekend. Alonso, he really came alive in the final stint, and it's good to see him up in the points positions.
Yeah, Alonso flying there. Started in 13th and up to 8th, collecting some valuable points for the French team. Next up, P9, Daniel Ricciardo had an awful qualifying 16th. Have a long first stint, pitted on lap 41, and making up 2 places at the start. A very good recovery drive, I think it's fair to say, Hodders.
Yeah, I think he'll be disappointed at going out in Q1 overall, which for Danny Rick is a very poor position in general. But I think he can be very pleased at recovering seven positions in the race itself. I think that familiar smile will be there all the way after Sunday.
Yes, the big Aussie grin from Danny Rick, and closing out the points paying positions. Pierre Gasly started 9th, dropped back to 10. A quiet race for the Frenchman there, Tyson.
Yeah, pretty much the same as Leclerc. It's quite uneventful weekend, but he finished off with a point.
Yeah, and it's points that his team AlphaTauri need. Right, on to those who did finish but didn't score, unfortunately. And P11 for Carlos Sainz, having started 5th, just dropped down the field after his first stop. Tyson, not a good performance from the Spaniard.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty disappointing for Sainz because Ferrari have looked pretty good so far. So, yeah, falling down the order like that, disappointing to see.
It didn't appear to be any sort of technical reasons as to why this happened, so it may just be a slight blip, and hopefully he gets this out. It's out of the way before his home race.
Yep.
Moving on to Antonio Giovinazzi, a driver who actually had a very good weekend, qualified 12th and finished 12th. Not bad.
Not at all. He finished out as he set to do. He had a comfortable mid-pack finish. Not the top 10, but there are plenty of races left where he could do. If he carries on the way he is, you never know. He could get into the points for Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, he just needs one of those crazy races that often pops up every now and then, although we have had 2 of them this year already. P13, and unlucky for some, Sebastian Vettel, qualified 10th. And then dropped to P13. Just a bit of an anomaly this weekend, Tyson.
Yeah, it we didn't really get to see much of Aston Martin this weekend like we have been doing.
No, very true. Also disappointing for his teammate Lance Stroll. Qualified 17th, got up to 14th, stopped late on lap 39. Was just a quiet weekend for the Aston Martin team in general.
Yeah, for Aston Martin, nothing special, nothing disastrous, just part of the course, really.
Well, let's hope it's not the sign of things to come. Moving on, position 15, Yuki Tsunoda. A quiet weekend for the Japanese youngster, although he's come out in the press to say that he was very disappointed with his performance. Tyson, he's showing you to be very professional with the comments that he's coming out. He's very constructive on himself, but is he perhaps being a little too hard on himself in these opening races?
I think he is a little bit. It is his first season after all. He does have to acclimate himself to the car.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think if he continues to work as hard as he has been, those point finishes will come.
Oh yeah, they will come eventually.
Absolutely. Moving further down the grid, P16 for George Russell, his best career qualifying result, getting into P11. I think he was about 3 or 4 tenths shy of getting into qualifying 3, but unfortunately a poor race, just dropped through the field. Hodders, not really a great weekend for George, when actually he could have really done with a solid race given what happened last time out.
Yeah, I think after last time he definitely needed something solid. It's a shame to finish where he did, but at least he can take some heart in the fact that he wasn't far off Q3, which, in the position he's in, can't be knocked. You take your victories where you get them.
Absolutely. P17 for Mick Schumacher, very importantly, overtaking Nicholas Latifi late on in the race. Tyson, a good result.
Yeah, very good result for Schumacher. Considering that Haas, I believe they're not developing the car this year, they have to take what they can get. And if they're able to fight with Latifi and the Williams, that's a good sign.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, we always say that the first person you need to beat in Formula 1 is your teammate. But if you can start passing your rivals, that's always a good start. As we mentioned, P18, Nicholas Latifi qualified 18th, finished 18th. Unfortunately, it was a mistake late on where he locked up and he lost the position to Schumacher. Let's move on to one of our regular targets for a bit of bashing, unfortunately. And Tyson, this weekend, it is deserved. Started 20th, finished 19th. Got a penalty late on for ignoring blue flags, which it was so bad. It's a driver 101. You shouldn't be making those mistakes.
Yeah, I think it was a well-deserved penalty. Just getting in the way of the leader like that, it's something you can't do. And
it's one that's, had Perez not taken avoiding action, it could have had some very serious consequences.
Yeah, it could.
Yeah. And lastly, Kimi Räikkönen out on lap 2 after colliding with his... he was fiddling with some controls on his steering wheel, collided with his teammate, lost his front wing, triggering an early safety car. Holland's not a great race for the Finn, and not a great scenario from someone who's been in the sport for over 20 years.
Yeah, it's one of those cases where it's a cliche, I know it's worn out, but really should know better than that, than to be messing about with the setting on your wheel, particularly when you're in lap 2 and everything's so compacted. Unless it was something urgent, in which case, fair enough. But if it wasn't urgent, there's no point messing about and then colliding with your own teammate and having a very early bath. He will be very disappointed, and rightly so.
Indeed. So there are your 20 for the Portuguese Grand Prix. Let's have a quick visit to the stewards' office, and it is only a quick one because it's just the one penalty which we mentioned for Nikita Mazepin, and the note there from the stewards. Mazepin just leaving the pit lane with Perez coming down the main straight. Mazepin turned into turn 3 whilst Perez was attempting to overtake on the inside line. Perez was forced to abandon the pass and lock up to avoid a collision. Whilst not mitigating the breach of the regulations, the stewards note that Mazepin did not have a radio warning in time to react. So a 5-second time penalty, the time added to his race time, and 1 penalty point. Hodders, the drivers, they are shown the blue flags. They have the blue lights on their dashboard, which indicates a car is coming up behind. As we said, this is driving 101. Yeah, you as soon as you get those blue flags, you have to jump out of the way.
It is pure common. He said it's driving on. It's pure common sense. I mean, yes, they know he didn't get a radio warning, but as the old saying goes, ignorance is no real defence when you've got everything in front of you. You've got it right in front of your eyes on your wheel, and on the flags, and on the indicators on the track. There's no real excuse for any of it.
Indeed. Right, so moving on to the winners and spinners for this weekend, and the top three there. We are very suitably pleased with Danny Ricciardo, Esteban Ocon, and Fernando Alonso. Daniel, we think our driver of the weekend, as you mentioned, P16 to P9, a very, very good recovery drive, and it could have been more, Hodders.
It could very much have been more. I mean, it might have been different strategies may have done better, but again, to go up 7 places after an absolutely torrid qualifying race, or qualifying campaign as it were, you can't really complain at getting points like that.
No, absolutely. And Ocon, Alonso, the Alpines just seemed switched on the whole weekend, Tyson. Really good, solid driving from the pair of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Just good consistency all weekend.
And bringing home a good haul of points. I think 14 points. I think they brought home, which is superb for a midfield team. As for the spinners, well, Max Verstappen, he's costing himself points with these track limits violations. He's had 3 this season already, which is not good. Kimi Räikkönen, obviously hitting your teammate, that's one of the rules, of combat. Really, you don't hit your teammate. And Mazepin, obviously, we've given him his mention for ignoring the blue flags. So let's have a look at the talking points, and because it was a really bit of an uneventful Portuguese Grand Prix, there's only one place to look, and that is Hamilton versus Verstappen, round 3. We are going to go into a bit more detail now. Hamilton was absolutely ruthless on the safety car restart, no question. But Tyson, is it fair to say that Max could cost himself a serious amount of points and therefore the championship if he does not respect these track limits?
It's very possible. He can't be making these mistakes if he's got title ambitions.
Yeah, I mean, I think he could have and possibly should have won in Bahrain, and he had the fastest lap penalty taken away from him. So
and the qualifying,
and the qualifying as well. So you think he should have had an extra point this weekend? He should have had 7 points more in Bahrain. Hamilton would have had 7 points less. So it's a 15-point swing.
All these little things are adding up.
Absolutely. So, Verstappen's a great racer, and we get excited when we see Verstappen trying to overtake anybody, let alone whether it's Hamilton. But some of this stuff, if he tries this sort of stuff when we get to Monaco in a couple of weeks' time, he's going to be pulling that Red Bull out of the barriers, and given the cost caps that we've got in place, Red Bull can't afford to be doing that.
And we've seen him do that in seasons prior.
We have. We've seen him do it in qualifying. When Monaco is the place you can ill afford to be crashing in qualifying. So that's all that. So let's have a look at the Drivers' Championship. So Hamilton leads Verstappen 69 to 61, so an 8-point gap there. Norris, fantastic start to the season, sitting there in 3rd place on 37 points. Bottas 5 behind on 32. Leclerc 28, Perez 22, Ricciardo 16, Sainz on 14, Ocon and Gasly, the 2 Frenchmen on 8 and 7, Stroll and Alonso tied for 5 points, and Yuki Tsunoda bringing up the rear on 2 points. 7 drivers yet to score. Meanwhile, in the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes, the first team to hit triple point on 101. Red Bull 18 points behind on 83. McLaren Mercedes very comfortable there in third on 53, Ferrari on 42, and then it's the Triple A's, Alpine on 13, AlphaTauri on 9, Aston Martin on 5, the other A team, Alfa Romeo on 0, along with Williams and Haas. So, just a bit of a taste of what's to come. So, this weekend we've got the Spanish Grand Prix from the Circuit de Catalunya in Barcelona. Next weekend we'll have the podcast for the Spanish Grand Prix, and then, as we mentioned, the following weekend is the Monaco Grand Prix, and of course the Saturday after, on the 29th of May, we will bring you the Double Waved Yellows podcast for that one. So before we go to final thoughts, just some other news that has come up. The Turkish Grand Prix will now replace the Canadian Grand Prix. Unfortunately, the COVID protocols they have in Canada means that it's not suitable for the F1 calendar as it currently sits, which is a shame because F1 likes going to Montreal, and Montreal loves having the F1 atmosphere there. But it's being replaced with the Istanbul track in Turkey. Hodders, that's not a bad switch, is it?
Not at all. We've had some great races in Istanbul before. A pity to lose Canada, but, needs must under the current situation. But there's always next year.
Absolutely. And it may well be, Tyson, that next year we may have both Istanbul and Montreal on the calendar. There's some great replacements in the calendar at the moment.
Yep, it's a possibility. Shame to lose Canada, but yeah, looking forward to Turkey.
Mm-hmm. And the other bit of news, it's finally been confirmed that sprint qualifying will happen. We will be doing a VSC podcast on that very soon. But to very quickly summarise it, so for some select races, qualifying will now be held when Friday practice 2 would normally happen. That qualifying sets the grid for a 100-kilometre sprint race on the Saturday, which should take place on the Saturday afternoon, and then the result of that race sets the grid for Sunday. More details to come on the Double Waved Yellows VSC podcast. Final thoughts from you guys. Tyson, will come to you first.
It wasn't as eventful a race as the last few have been, but sometimes nice quiet race is just what you need.
Absolutely. And Hodders, we're next going to the Barcelona circuit. It's a circuit that Hamilton tends to do well, but we can often get surprise results.
I think it's very much a case of expect the unexpected. Cat on your beans, it also depends on the weather. It will also be nice to see F3 make its debut for the season and support race as well.
Yes.
Indeed, and we will indeed be covering that next weekend as well. Right, that's it from all of us. My thanks to Hodders and to Tyson for all their help in doing this podcast. As always, make sure you leave a like, a subscribe, and a comment down below. We will reply to all the comments. Thanks, everyone, for listening and for watching. And we will speak to you all again in a couple of weeks' time for the Spanish Grand Prix podcast. Take care, be good, and if you can't be good, be safe. Thanks, everyone.